It's another Football Friday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, joined by our college football coverage team from his home in Norman, OU beat writer Jason Kersey. From his vehicle, I believe somewhere in Norman, columnist Barry Trammell. From the road to Ames, Iowa, columnist Jenny Carlson. And am I mistaken? Is Kyle in that same vehicle on the road to Ames, Iowa?
Some Inception stuff right there. Oh, Mike's frozen.
Talking. Football Friday, big week this week. There's Jason. Jason, we're going to start with you. You're not frozen. So, OU Baylor, the game of the week in the Big 12, one of the games of the week in the country. And along comes ESPN's Reese Davis with this statement. OU is the Ohio State of this year. You buying it?
No, not entirely. Although it could happen. Ohio State was 16th in the first playoff rankings last year. OU was 15th this year in the first playoff rankings. They both lost a game they shouldn't have lost. The difference, I think, is that Virginia Tech was not a horrible team like Texas is, for one, and also they lost it very early in the season. They just lost Braxton Miller. JT Barrett was making one of the first starts of his career. So I think it's a little bit different. I'm not buying that. No.
Barry, how about you? The Virginia Tech Texas comparison. How did the Sooners come out on that?
Well, they come out poorly because Texas stinks. But they could be Ohio State. You don't know yet. The problem with Oklahoma is this: they really haven't been tested too much yet. They finish with Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State, then we're going to know. If they win all three games, they're in title contention. If they don't win all three, they're not. So Ohio State, yes, Ohio State finished very strong last year, beating Michigan State, Michigan, and Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game. But they did that. The Sooners haven't done it yet. And the truth of the matter is, OU's offense, which everybody's gaga about, has been tested, has failed on its two biggest stages this season. It was not good at Tennessee, rallied in the fourth quarter, got to overtime, won the game. It was terrible against Texas. So far the Sooners have proven that they can beat up on the Big 12's mediocre and bad teams. Let's see what they do in Waco before we start putting the Buckeyes on their helmets.
Ooh, that'd be pretty cool, Jenny. Putting Buckeyes on the back of Sooners helmets. I don't know. If we were writing about that today, that could be a good illustration. Let me ask you a question that Barry sort of alluded to. He said the Buckeyes had that great finishing kick. The Sooners have an opportunity for a great finishing kick. I haven't studied it, but where was Ohio State? What did Ohio State accomplish to the point when they were ranked 16th in the college football rankings? Had they had this stretch where they were beating up on the Indianas of the world, the Marylands of the world, dare I say? Is that why the analogy sort of fits? She's still muted. I can't hear her. Jump in, Barry. Does the analogy fit there?
I can't remember Ohio State scores last year, but they clearly won all their games. They got hot at the end, beat Michigan State, survived Michigan when JT Barrett got hurt, and then just took apart Wisconsin. So it wasn't just that Ohio State won all those games, but that it did so in such dominating fashion, particularly Wisconsin. So while it would help the Sooners to win all these games, to dominate a game or two would really, really help.
Jenny, let's try you again. Can you weigh in? Oh, shucks. I'm not sure what the problem is, but we're not hearing you. How about you, Kyle? Let's just check in with you, see if I can hear you from the car.
Yeah, how do I sound?
You sound great. You
Hey.
sound
Can
great.
you hear me now?
Now I can. You can talk through Kyle's.
What the heck is going on around here?
Yeah, can they hear you good enough? Just, you want to?
Yeah, I guess I'll talk through Kyle's mic, and you can just put my picture up there or something. I don't know what's going on.
Super.
I will say this. I do think the very late impression that Ohio State left on the committee last year, was what got them in. I mean, we saw the rankings the week before that Big Ten game, and TCU was in at that point, and then TCU was out after that Big Ten game. So I think it brings into question, not only winning, but potentially how the Sooners win. But then it also brings up that bigger issue of that 13th game. I don't think we can discount that. The Sooners will not be playing that first weekend in December. The Big 12 does have a couple games that week, but it's going to be a week after the Sooners are done before that committee makes its final decision. So, is that gonna be part of it? The fact that they didn't have to play a 13th game, is that gonna be part of it? I think it's all really interesting to see how it all plays out. But I think what Barry said is right. If they could, not only win these last three, but maybe dominate one or two, that would be huge for the Sooners' chances of getting in.
Jason, I think a bunch of us picked the Sooners to win. I think I did. I know Barry did. Jenny, didn't you pick the Sooners to win Saturday?
Yes,
but I don't think any of us are really seeing this as an opportunity to dominate. Are you?
No, I picked Baylor to win by 2 touchdowns, actually. So no, I don't think that this is an opportunity for them to dominate, and I don't think they will.
Okay, let's finish this question here. Jenny, if you had to pick one, more ESPN hype or truth? You had to pick one. What's Reese Davis's statement about the Sooners in Ohio State?
Well, at this point, I think it is hype. Obviously there's a lot of football left to be played, and the Sooners are going to have to prove a lot before they get to the playoff, much less win a championship, which is what Ohio State did last year. So, I think what Barry said is right. They've beaten up the teams that they should beat up. This is obviously an impressive run that this offense has put together. But as I wrote a couple weeks ago, we aren't going to know if the run game's fixed until, we see them against some teams where they actually need to run the ball. Running, wild against Kansas and Iowa State and teams like that, that's not impressive. But if they can start to do that on Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State, well, then that's a different story. But I'm still not convinced that some of the problems that we saw against Texas when it comes to the offensive front, some of the problems that we saw against even Tulsa with the secondary, how well are they going to be able to manage against a team that throws it around like Baylor, TCU, and OSU are going to want to do these next 3 weeks? How do they hold up? I just think there's still a lot of questions left to be answered about this team before we say that they're Ohio State.
Barry, more hype or truth?
Oh, hype's the wrong word. Hype's the wrong word. But it's more marketing. It's more promotion. Think about how popular that Tuesday night show has become. It's become must-see TV for all sports fans. So part of that is the discussion that goes on. I watched the whole dang thing Tuesday night. You had Jeff Long. He's always interesting because he's bashing the Big 12 in code. But Art Briles was on it. But just the discussion among panelists is very interesting, with Paul Feinbaum, of all people, taking up for the Big 12, and Reese Davis saying things like Oklahoma's the new Ohio State. So it's more marketing. It's just making us talk college football on a Tuesday night.
Jason, your good friend Paul Feinbaum taking up for the Big 12. More I hear about it, more I think that Reese Davis is more hype than truth. Which side of the coin are you going down on?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everybody said. I mean, it's impossible to know if it's true yet, and again, I I come back to, I just, Ohio State's loss was much more forgivable, I think, than OU's. Virginia Tech at least made a bowl game last year. Texas probably isn't going to make one this year. So I think it's probably more hype.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Jenny, in yesterday's editions of the Oklahoman, Jason Kersey had a profile or a story on Jeff Lebby, the mystery man from the Baylor coaching staff who wound up on the Tulsa sideline for the OU Tulsa game, wearing a Tulsa hat, shirt, and we are told that this was all a matter of friendship between him and Philip Montgomery, who was on the same coaching staff as Lebby and Art Briles down at Baylor. You buying it? Or was there something more than friendship involved when he was down there watching the Sooners and Hurricane play?
Well, I have to say that the fact that he was roommates for a couple years with J.D. Runnels and Jacob Rice, who Jason quoted in that story, to me, those are two guys that I see as pretty stand-up guys, especially J.D. Runnels. I mean, I think we all know what a quality character guy he is. So the fact that those guys lived with Jeff Lebby for a couple years, to me, was telling. I thought that was really interesting. But, you know, I think as much as anything, I'm not so sure that it was him trying to do something that, you know, was breaking a rule, as much as it sort of is a reminder that, you know, Baylor's, it seems like, is a little bit, willy-nilly with the rules. I mean, he had to serve a suspension for breaking some recruiting rules. Then they obviously had the situation with the player who they really didn't vet well enough, you know, when he's transferring Sam Wachku from Boise State, didn't vet him the way they needed to. You know, it just seems like there's maybe a tendency not to really know or care much about the rules that are out there at Baylor, and I think that just further adds to some of the frustration and disdain that's out there around the Big 12 about what the Bears are doing in their football program down there in Waco. Are they running an above-board program? I think that just brings into question, do these guys even know the rules, much less follow them?
Barry, does J.D. Runnels vouching for Jeff Lebby sort of make you think, this is actually pretty innocent?
No, not particularly. I love JD, but the guy hadn't been around in 7-8 years, and he's been living in the enemy camp. Not just living, married into it. I mean, this is an Old Testament story. This is King David this is David marrying King Saul's daughter. So it's one big mess. One of two things is true. Jeff Lebby is an idiot, or Jeff Lebby is unscrupulous. Whichever side his people want to claim, I'm all for. I'll sign up to either one of them. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's something else. We know this. We know he walked it to the stadium with a hat on, and when he got to the game, he changed hats.
And the second, Jason, which side of that coin? Go ahead,
We
Barry.
know that he works for Baylor, and he went to OU, and he put on a Tulsa blue shirt. That much we know. We know that some people think that being on the sidelines really can help somebody scouting-wise. We know it's against the rules to be on the sideline or even in the stands, really, scouting. So the case against Jeff Lebby is fairly significant. Let's put it that way. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think he's an idiot.
How about it, Jason? You're the one who's been writing this story most. Is there anything you know that you haven't written? Or as we put a bow on this, where do you come down on it?
Well, it's just it's kind of tough because, I don't think that I'm trying to think of how to say this. I think Jeff Lebby knew he was doing something wrong. I think he knew he was breaking the rules. Or at the very least, he knew that he wasn't supposed to be there or shouldn't be there. Whether he knew it was a rule or not, I don't know, because like Jenny said, Baylor doesn't seem to care all that much about rules a lot of times. But the very fact, like Barry said, that he showed up in a Tulsa-colored shirt, that he changed hats into a Tulsa hat when he got down onto the field. That right there tells me that he probably was trying to blend in. And if he was trying to blend in, then that would obviously mean that he at least thought maybe I shouldn't be here. And if he really thought that he was going to be able to blend in, then maybe he is kind of an idiot, because he went to OU. Everybody at OU knows him, and it didn't take all that long for a guy who works for OU in compliance to recognize him and go tell him to get out of there. So I agree with Barry. I think the case is pretty significant. JD is going to defend his friends and his former teammates no matter what. He always does. But I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I apologize.
Well,
he probably knew he shouldn't have been there.
yeah, Barry. Let's close out on Baylor OU. You're writing about an old TV show, an old 60s and 70s TV show, I think, Lost in Space. Why is that your topic and theme for your column on Saturday?
Well, the Sooners have a difficult. Anybody that plays Baylor has a difficult problem. Baylor does not try to trick you. They don't try to confuse you. Baylor comes to town when they play a football game, and they say, we're going to figure out a way to get our best players one-on-one with your assigned players, and we're going to find out who's best. And the problem with Baylor is they got these wide receivers that are all world. So they stretch the field vertically, which means they run 50-yard pass patterns on a regular basis, and then all points in between, and they spread the field. So I figured it up. You're literally defending 2,500 square yards. That's what a defense has to do against Baylor. So it's a very, very tough thing. They just try to get the ball in space, either beyond the defense or one-on-one with the defense where they can break into the open. So most defenses that's why they succumb. They don't get outsmarted. They know what's coming. They just can't stop it.
Now that Barry's put it that way, I wonder if I could get my pick back. Jason.
Is there any chance that we can have a hangout rule from now on? You can be in the car and driving, or be in the car and on the hangout, but you cannot be driving and on the hangout. I'm a little uncomfortable with Barry moving out there.
I think it looks to me like I was a lot more steady than that thing you guys are bouncing around in. You taking a gravel road to Des Moines?
Listen, I feel way more stable in this car than I do watching you on the hangout as you drive.
Is this going to be another referendum on Barry's driving? Because if it is, that's not one of the questions I emailed everybody.
I'm just happy he's wherever he's going, and it looks like he may have stopped. Although now, is he going again?
He's a man of many talents. I'll give him that.
Yeah, okay.
Jason, what are you writing for Saturday?
My story for Saturday's paper is just about how the Sooners were once the kings of the Big 12, and when they were, Baylor was a doormat, and the Bears have done in the last couple of years. They've beaten them 3 out of 4 years. The last 2 years have been embarrassing for OU, and they've recruited some guys that OU wanted. They have, they've got the cool new alternate uniforms. They have the nice new stadium. I think the way that you described it, Mike, when we were talking about this story was it's like the skinny, nerdy kid who you used to pick on lifts weights all summer and comes back on the first day of school and beats you up.
Yes. We say it so many times, it's become accustomed, especially since the way Baylor's played the last 3 out of 4 times against the Sooners, but it's still, especially for a lot of old timers, this is Baylor that's beat up on the Sooners. A friend of mine, big Sooner fan, said he longed for the days of Grant Taft being back on the Baylor sideline. And he would have felt a lot better if he was back on the sideline Saturday night. Okay, let's switch to Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Kyle, you wrote about that today. Of course, we can't quite ever get past the 2011 OSU Iowa State game for many reasons. The tragedy, and then the game that sort of really upended Iowa State's hopes of winning. Oklahoma State's hopes of playing for a national championship, winning a national championship, all sort of ended up in a ditch in Ames, Iowa. So you're headed there again today. You are covering the game tomorrow, and the Cowboys don't have the kind of running game that teams that win on the road and teams that sort of moderate upset effects or upset threats normally do. So the absence of an OSU running game, what does that do to the upset alert in Ames tomorrow?
I think it's got to play some bit of a factor. I mean, if you had told OSU fans going into the year that Chris Carson was going to average 47 yards a game, which is what he's at right now, I don't think many would predict that OSU would be undefeated. But I think that kind of shows you the contrast of the playing style that OSU's been forced to go with right now. And it's worked, and it's not as if Iowa State's run defense is all that stellar. They're giving up about 190 yards a game on the ground. So this isn't that 2011 Iowa State team. At least it wouldn't appear, that has a type of upset potential. That Iowa State team that beat OSU, beating them on their home field, that gave them 6 wins. That gave them a bowl game. This is a 3-win Iowa State team that it doesn't look like they're going to win another one this year just based on their opponents and how they played to this point. But you're right. This is an OSU team that has had to really get creative in terms of how it runs the ball. We've seen so many of these wide receiver end arounds, a lot of pitchbacks, getting these guys involved in unique ways. So it's something that should concern OSU fans, not only in this game, but moving ahead as they face some of these better defenses and Baylor and OU not being able to run north-south really at all. Teams are going to key in on that, and I think will game plan to take away some of the unique ways OSU was run the ball. But in terms of this matchup and this week, I don't know if it's a panic button issue. But, you'd love to get Chris Carson involved to a point, where a lot of OSU fans and even us in the media thought he'd be, after watching him in practice a little bit, watching him early in the non-conference. But to this point, I think OSU is better going with their 4th-string walk-on and Raymond Taylor, a guy who's kind of shown that he provides the most burst and maybe some of the best durability among all these guys.
Barry, what's your upset alert set at for OSU, and does that lack of a running game do anything to it?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think if the weather was going to be really nasty, I would much prefer OSU to have a running game. I don't think it's going to be much of a weather factor. I think the upset alert is decent, just because not so much Iowa State being capable, but I do think it's a tough spot in the schedule for the Cowboys. And while they have been successful on the road, they've also been a little, it's not like they've spurted away from teams. That they're obviously better than Tech, obviously better than West Virginia, obviously better than Texas. But they went to the wire with the Mountaineers and the Longhorns and got behind Tech big early. So I'd like to see the Cowboys play a commanding game and put this away early, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think we could have a 4th quarter game.
Jenny, the Cowboys, as you're getting ready, as you have written about, have shifted a lot of their priorities around. You're writing for tomorrow's editions about the shift of scholarships from the offense to the defensive side, really leaving the offensive line sort of not as stacked as it has been in the past. Does this put OSU in any kind of difficult spot playing on the road?
Well, I mean, I think it helps explain some of the issues that they've had with the offensive line both last year and this year. But Mike Gundy made a decision 4 years ago, he said, to give more scholarships to the defense. And it started out at 3, and I believe it's now back to 2. But you can see how they have had more defensive guys in recruiting classes each of the last 3 years. And so while they've lost 3 guys that would be starters on that defense, I mean, they lost Billy Lavini before the year. and they lose Ryan Simpson, then they lose Jimmy Bean, all three starters at the time they were lost to injury, they continue to play great defense, and this defense has won games for them as they've went on this undefeated stretch. So, if you like the way that they continue to win, then I think you have to sort of, accept the fact that that's come with some cost, and that's been offensively Mike Gundy saying when he decided to do additional scholarships for the defense, he knew that it was going to impact the offense, but as an offensive guy, he felt like the offenses could scheme better than the defenses could. So he thought as much stress as the defense was under, with the Big 12 going to up-tempo spread offenses, with OSU going to up-tempo spread offenses, and meaning that the OSU defense sometimes didn't have a ton of rest in between possessions, he felt like they needed more resources. So he was willing to make that change, make that switch, and I think it's paid off for OSU. I mean, here they are undefeated. Maybe they don't win a national championship this year, but they've shown this is a really good team, and they've built a really good team, and it looks like they're going to take their chances. They've found ways to move the ball, even without a great running game. So I don't know why it wouldn't continue at Iowa State. I saw Iowa State last week, guys. They're not that good.
Here we go, Barry. Beware. Jenny's claimed to be an expert on Iowa State and Kansas. Here we go. It's not on the script. Sorry. Hey, Barry, for all of Gundy's great accomplishments, making OSU a consistent winner, doesn't his adaptability really put him sort of in a special category as a college football coach? Different offensive coordinators, different defensive coordinators, and this latest thing that Jenny's writing about, sort of the shifting of scholarships around and the results. Don't you think that it might be Gundy's greatest accomplishment at OSU?
Oh, no. I mean, I think most coaches, outside of Art Briles or Mike Leach, most great coaches aren't married to a particular offense. So I think you have to be adaptable, and I think Gundy has been. This is an excellent move. Switching the scholarships more to the defensive side was a very good move. But I might vote for just Gundy's consistent hiring of quality assistant coaches as his greatest move. He seems to have a lot of coaching turnover, both. Some of it is guys moving on to better jobs. Some of it's guys being asked to leave. But he always consistently puts together a quality staff, and I think that's very, very undervalued. So, but I mean, I like I said, moving the scholarships, great. He's been very adaptable. Even now they're not really running the true air raid as much as they did in the past. So. He's been very, very adaptable with his offenses.
Okay, guys, let's wind it up here. We got to get the OU guys on the road. We got to make safe the road for OSU guys. Let's end it up here. I sent you a question. When's the last time you found, or the most significant time you found yourself in a Jeff Lebby ordeal? Somewhere you really probably shouldn't have been. Jason, how about you? When's the last time you were levying?
Well, I was trying to think about this. I might have to go with, when I discovered that Santa Claus wasn't real because I stayed up. I pretended to be asleep when my parents came in to check and watched them put all the Christmas gifts out. That's about the most Jeff Lebby thing I think I've done that I can think of.
Kyle, how about it?
And it was really disappointing too. I remember.
We should have had the censors discount mute that previous statement. But luckily, kids, Michael and Anna are not in the room watching the hangout.
Kids are all in school, right? So
hope so. Kyle, ever done any Jeff Lebbying on your own? Hello, Kyle. Barry, what about you?
I can't hear you, Mike, if you're.
How about it? How about it, Jenny? When's the last time you were doing some Jeff Levying? Oh boy,
We lost her too.
we lost her too. All right, Barry, you tell
Sorry, I
us.
think
Well,
I was on our. Oh, hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Can I
She's
make
doing
that my
She's
ringtone?
doing that, but me driving while doing this is what's annoying.
They can't hear us apparently.
Okay.
Barry, how about you?
This is not espionage. It's not. It might be as stupid as what Jeff Levy did. When I was 17, I ended up in an event with two girls I was sort of dating at the same time. So I don't recommend that for anybody. Hey, I recommend spying on Nick Saban before I recommend doing that.
And with that, we're going to wind it up. That's all for this edition of Football Friday, but you can stay with the best coverage team anywhere. Every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman. Drive safely, team.